Hello there. So I'm sitting in my house on this beautiful snow day and getting ready to teach you the mini lesson that you will use on Monday when I'm not there. So hopefully you've got your earbuds or your headphones and you're ready to dive into thinking more about features. We know from our reading study of feature articles how important those features actually are to activating schema and preparing our brain for the main ideas that we're about to see. When people read our feature articles, they're going to be expecting to see features that can help them get ready for the main ideas that are coming, prepare them for what they're about to read, and help them organize and prioritize in their mind the ideas that we present in our piece. So this mini lesson is going to help us make sure we're choosing just the right features so we're staying true to our core message, not just picking pretty pictures that we find on the internet. So the teaching point that I want to focus on with you today, if you'll take a look here, is that we know the features help the reader decide what to focus on as they read, but we also need to now be thinking as writers, and that authors are going to select features with care, keeping in mind how they want to guide their readers' thinking. So let's think for a second about what features all feature articles should include. There's some that you have to have, and others you can have. We know all feature articles have titles, subtitles, and section headings. That's a given. So all of you need to create those for your own article. But we got to do that with care, and we have to do that in a way that will guide our readers' thinking. So let's first take a look at some of these titles, subtitles, and headings from articles we've already read and ask ourselves the questions, what are the qualities of effective titles and subtitles and headings? And what do we notice also about how they're capitalized? So let's first take a look at how plastic is trashing the planet. Just take a moment, think about what that title is telling you to prepare your brain for as you read the piece. I know we're talking about plastic. I know we're talking about the environment. And we know we're talking about something negative because of the word trashing. So I'm already preparing for that. I'm also noticing capitalization. I notice that every major word in the title is capitalized. First and last word is capitalized, as well as any word that is more than 3 letters long. So remember that rule that we learned? You always capitalize the first word, the last word, and any word that's longer than 3 letters. So that can help you remember that for your title. Let's take a look at the subtitle of that article. Plastic was invented to make our lives better, but our dependence on it has created an environmental crisis. Can we reduce our use before it's too late? What do you notice about that subtitle that you might learn for writing your own subtitle? Well, it starts out with a statement about plastic that's kind of positive, that it had a good intention when it was made. But then it shifts to this idea of environment, which came up in the title, this idea that now it's causing a really big problem. And I noticed the subtitle ends with a question that kind of makes me as the reader prepared to look for information that could help me answer that question as I read on. Okay? And then I'm looking at these headings here, the rise of throwaway living, Asia's trash problem, how plastic kills, and putting plastic in its place. What do you notice about those headings? One thing I notice is that the headings are capitalized the same way that titles are. But go back to the subtitle. That's capitalized differently, isn't it? That's just like regular capitalization in text where the first word of the sentence is capitalized, but the rest aren't. That's worth noting. Okay. Remember, these headings are giving us a preview of what the whole section is going to be about, but they're also a little bit catchy. They make me curious. Like when I see Asia's trash problem, I'm like, where in Asia? And why is it special to Asia? So I want to know these things as I read on. Let's compare these to the next article on jeweling. So the title Is Jewel Fooling You? Now this title's a question. The other one wasn't, so I guess you could do either kind. I also noticed a funny little play on words, which some of you noticed too in your reading summative assessment. This jewel fooling you. They spelled fool differently. They spelled it like jewel. So sometimes we see that feature article titles might have a little fun with their wording or be a little clever in the way they word them. Okay, I definitely know it's previewing the topic of the piece. We know that we're talking about Juul, so we're talking about e-cigarettes. And this question of is it fooling you makes me think maybe there's something suspicious or not quite straightforward about Juul. So I'm already activating schema for that. Let's take a look at the subtitle for that one and see how that compares to the plastic trashing the planet. It's as small as a flash drive, but has as much nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. Did the company behind this popular electronic cigarette intentionally market its product to teens? Again, I notice it ends with a question. I'm wondering if all feature article subtitles end with a question. That kind of prompts my thinking as I read on. What else do you notice? It's describing Juul a little bit. Okay, definitely activating that schema for me. Let's look at these headings. Getting teens addicted? Question mark. Health risks. Cracking down on Juul. These headings seem a little more straightforward to me than the headings from How Plastic is Trashing the Planet. Like, it's real clear to me what these sections are going to be about, whereas the heading sections for How Plastic is Trashing the Planet sometimes are really obvious, like how plastic kills, but the rise of throwaway living and putting plastic in its place were a little bit less clear. Okay, so sometimes they're really straightforward, and that's fine, and sometimes they're a little bit more clever. So I took a stab at creating a title, subtitle, and heading sections, heading titles for my article on yoga. So let me scroll down and show you what I came up with and see what you think. So my title is The Yoga Revolution. Does it really do that? I'm already noticing I need to capitalize things differently. So does it really do that? Okay. So I'm hoping that that title will activate schema in my reader. Obviously, I'm talking about yoga, but I'm also posing this question, like, to get my reader thinking, is yoga do everything people claim that it does? Maybe we'll explore that in my article. And here's my subtitle. Yoga is an ancient practice that has recently experienced a massive resurgence. Why are so many people obsessed, and does it really live up to the hype? So I also chose to end in a question with my subtitle, previewed a little bit of pieces from my core message, because part of my core message is going to be about where yoga came from, how old it is. Also, my core message in my article is going to be about how there's a spike in yoga practicing around the Western world, and there's a real increase in it. So that's where I bring up this massive resurgence. But in my core message, I'm also going to talk about why are people so drawn to yoga today? And is it really delivering what people claim that it is? So I'm kind of prepping my reader with that question at the end of the subtitle. And then when we take a look at my heading sections, the way I made these was I went back to my core message. There's really 4 parts in my core message, and I knew I needed a section heading for each one because I need a section of text for each one. And then I thought, well, what would make sense to kind of preview what that whole section of text is going to be about? So I'm starting by telling people where yoga came from. So I'm going to call that section an ancient tradition. And then I'm trying to be a little clever here with section number 2. This section of my article is going to all be about coming back to this ancient tradition, the popularity coming back, how we're rediscovering yoga, we are returning to this ancient practice. And one of the yoga teachers that I use in my daily practice, she often will say, return to the breath during our yoga practice, just to remind us to think about our breathing again. So I'm borrowing that phrase from her and kind of prepping my reader that we're going to be talking about a return to this practice of yoga. My third section is going to talk about how, with this new popularity in yoga, we have things like free yoga on YouTube and yoga studios. Gosh, like almost as many yoga studios as we see Starbucks around town. So there's yoga really available for everybody, whether you can pay or not. So that's why I'm calling that section Yoga for All. And then my last section is really going to explore, does yoga do all the things that it says it does? And I'm going to look at some personal stories from people. So I'm just calling that section, does it really do that? It's pretty straightforward, kind of obvious. What I would like you to do now is pause the video, and I would like you, on your copy, I've shared this document with you in Google Classroom, and I've added an extra row in this chart for you on the document I shared with you in Google Classroom. In that blank row, I'd like you to pause the video right now, and I'd like you to experiment with maybe 2 different possible titles for your feature article. Because you never know. Maybe the first one, you love it, and maybe the second one's going to be better. So just try 2 different ones. Just play with it. And then try a subtitle and follow the strategies we've noticed for the 3 subtitles we've studied here. You want to preview a little bit more of your core message in your subtitle. And we want to end with a question that's thought-provoking, that's guiding and focusing our reader for what they should be paying attention for as they read in our article. And then I want you to try to come up with section headings for each of the sections of your article. Now, maybe you have 4, maybe you have 3, however many kind of pieces to your core message, that's how many section headings you're going to have. So pause the video, write those now, and when you're done with that, come back and replay the video for the next step. Okay, welcome back. Now I want to do just a really quick little preview of some other kinds of features that you might choose to have. These are ones that aren't necessarily, all of them aren't required, but you should have some of them. So let's scroll down and take a look here. This is a list of different possible features you might have. We've looked at articles that all of them really have pictures and captions, so we should probably have one of those. Some have maps, graphs, tables and charts, pop-out text, sidebars if you feel like you need to give some more information. So again, we know that features are there to anchor the reader in the core message, to bring the reader back to what's the most important thing to focus on. So you really want to make sure you've got features that line up with all the parts of your core message. So here I've pasted my core message down, and I've highlighted in different colors the different sections of my message. And I've thought about what would make sense to go with them. So I could, when I think about what yoga is and where this tradition originated, one of the things I thought that might be cool is a map that shows where India is on the planet, because India is where yoga originated. So I went to Google Images and I searched, and I found this map here that kind of has India highlighted. And we've seen maps like this in other feature articles we've read, so I think I might use that to just highlight India. But another thing I thought that I could use for that part, if I wanted, was maybe I could do a little sidebar where I can go into some more detail about the history of yoga, and where it comes from. And I could go into a little bit more depth in like a small sidebar on the side. So that's possible for me. Another part of my core message is this idea that I want the reader to understand the rise in popularity and the spike that we're seeing. And I found this really cool graphic right here. It says Yoga in America Study, this one. And that is, when you zoom in on that, and I can make it bigger in my article, but it has all of these statistics arranged in a graphic format that show the increase we've been seeing in yoga and how, the percentage of people who practice it and where they practice it and how much money they're spending on it every year. So I thought that would be a really nice feature to go with this idea that there's been a real spike and increase in yoga. Another part of my core message is that this increase is having impact and having effects. And some of these effects are that people can get yoga for free on YouTube, but other effects we're seeing are like a lot of commercialization and people trying to make money off of yoga. So we see Lululemon and Athleta and Prana, and we see yoga studios, like I was saying before, with every Starbucks, and that's expensive. It's like $25 for a 1-hour class for yoga. So that's a lot of money making that's going on. So some of the features I thought I could include for that are a picture of the Lululemon storefront. And then this is a picture of actually the yoga teacher I use online, and all of her videos are free and they're super high quality. Her YouTube channel is Yoga with Adriene. And so I'm going to actually quote her in my article. So I think I might put this picture with a caption. Keep in mind, all these pictures have to have captions with them. So I have to do some planning about what I'm going to say about these pictures. And then the last kind of part of my core message is, does it really do that? And so I'm going